The sun was setting as Captain Harris and his crew sailed into the waters of Blackwater Bay, an infamous stretch of coastline known for its dark history. The bay had been the site of countless shipwrecks, many of which were rumored to be caused by the ghostly ship that sailed its waters under the cover of night. The locals called it the Specter, a ship that vanished years ago, only to return every decade, wreaking havoc on anyone who dared to cross its path. Captain Harris had heard the stories, but dismissed them as mere folklore. The crew, on the other hand, wasn't so sure. They could feel the tension in the air, the uneasy silence that surrounded the bay. The waters here were treacherous, filled with sharp rocks and powerful currents, but they were about to find something far worse than any natural danger. The night fell quickly, casting the bay into an eerie darkness. Harris stood at the helm, his hand gripping the wheel as the rest of the crew went about their duties. Suddenly, one of the sailors, Thomas, let out a shout from the lookout post. "Captain, there's something in the water!" His voice trembled with fear. Harris turned, narrowing his eyes at the black expanse of water. At first he saw nothing, just the dark waves lapping against the ship's hull. But then he noticed a strange glow on the horizon, faint but unmistakable. It was a light, coming from a ship, but no ship was supposed to be out here. The crew gathered on deck, staring in disbelief at the glowing shape moving slowly across the water. It was a ghost ship, its sails tattered and its hull black as midnight. The ship seemed to glide effortlessly, as though it were drifting above the water, not touching it at all. As the ship drew closer, a chill wind swept over the deck, and an unnatural fog rolled in from the bay. It enveloped the Specter, and as the mist parted, the ghost ship was gone. The crew was silent, staring out into the fog. Was it a hallucination, a trick of the light, or had they just witnessed something far more sinister?
The next day, the crew woke to find the ship in the same location, still anchored off the coast of Blackwater Bay. Captain Harris, though still skeptical, ordered the ship to set sail toward it. Something about the Specter called to him, something he couldn't explain. As they neared the ghost ship, the temperature dropped sharply, and the crew began to feel the weight of something ominous pressing down on them. The fog remained thick, like a living thing, wrapping around the ship and obscuring their vision. "Captain, something's not right," Thomas shouted, his voice filled with dread. The crew looked around, and in the distance they could just make out the outline of the Specter, now much closer. Its sails were torn, and its wooden planks were blackened, almost as if it had been burned. "We should turn back," another sailor, William, urged. But Captain Harris pressed on, driven by curiosity and the strange pull he felt. As the ship came within shouting distance, the eerie sound of creaking wood reached their ears, followed by what sounded like whispers, faint but distinct, carried on the wind. The Specter was real. There was no doubt about it. The crew could see the figures on board now, pale and gaunt, their eyes empty as they stared toward the crew's ship. Their faces were twisted in expressions of eternal torment, as though they were begging for release from some unseen force.
As the crew climbed aboard the Specter, they were greeted by an unsettling silence. The ship's deck was eerily still, the only sound being the creak of the wood beneath their feet. The crew moved cautiously, unsure of what they would find. The figures that had once been seen aboard the ship were now gone, leaving behind only an overwhelming sense of despair. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the ship's interior was a maze of rotting corridors and rusted metal. Every room they entered was covered in mildew and moss, and strange markings, like symbols of an ancient cult, covered the walls. James, the ship's first mate, found something even more unsettling below deck. A large, ornate chest sat in the center of the room, covered in dust and cobwebs. As he approached it, he noticed a strange glow emanating from within. "Captain, you need to see this!" James called out to Harris, his voice echoing in the empty halls of the Specter. When Harris arrived, he ordered the chest to be opened. Inside was a book, an ancient leather-bound tome. The pages were yellowed with age, and the words written inside were in a language none of them could recognize. As Harris flipped through the pages, he began to understand the truth. The Specter was no ordinary ghost ship. It was cursed, trapped in an endless cycle of death and suffering. The crew had been doomed to sail the waters of Blackwater Bay for eternity, unable to escape their fate. And the curse was about to claim more victims.
As Captain Harris finished reading the cursed book, he heard a low growl emanating from below deck. The crew turned toward the sound, but no one dared to move. Then the ship's sails began to unfurl, despite the lack of wind. The air grew thick and heavy, the fog swirling with an unnatural force. The whispers, which had been growing louder, now became screams, agonizing cries of the ship's doomed crew from centuries past. The Specter began to move, slowly at first, and then faster. The ship seemed to be alive, driven by a malevolent force. The crew tried to fight it, but the ship pulled them into the heart of the bay, where the waters grew dark and churning. "We need to get off this ship!" shouted William, his voice hoarse with fear. But it was too late. The mist thickened, and a massive wave rose from the water, crashing over the Specter. The crew was thrown into the cold, dark sea, unable to swim against the powerful current. James, Harris, and the rest of the crew fought for their lives, but one by one they disappeared beneath the waves, dragged into the depths by unseen forces. And when the storm finally passed, the Specter was gone, vanished once again into the fog. To this day, the ship is said to return every decade, its cursed crew waiting for new souls to claim. Anyone who sails into Blackwater Bay after dark is doomed to face the ghost ship's wrath.